Hi, my name is Scott Magnacca, and I'm an economist, professional speaker, author, and certified financial planner. I've spent nearly 30 years working at companies like Fidelity, TIAA, and Edelman Financial Engines to help hundreds of thousands of customers succeed financially. And today we're going to talk about two very interesting tools of unconscious influence: commitment and consistency. And by the end of this short video, you're going to understand how these important tools of unconscious influence work, and more importantly, how you can use and apply these concepts today, right now, with your boss, your family, your friends, maybe your coworkers, pretty much anybody that you may want to influence or have an impact on. So, what is commitment and consistency, and why does this matter to you? Well, modern scientific research has proven that people that understand how to utilize these tools in their lives are typically happier, better communicators. They enjoy their jobs more, they're better managers, better marketers and salespeople, and surprisingly, they're also very often typically wealthier and they make a lot fewer personal and professional mistakes than people who don't understand how to use these tools. So let's understand and define what these are and how to use them effectively. So, from a psychological perspective, the term consistency refers to the strong desire of somebody to act in the future in a way that is consistent with their past behavior. Once we make a choice or we take a stand on a particular issue, there's powerful internal pressures that come to bear to keep us consistent with the decisions that we've made in the past. For example, think about planning for a wedding, for example. You need to plan the location, the meal, the flowers, who to invite, where to hold the wedding. Each one of these small decisions build on each other, and they're like a train moving down the track. The further you go forward, the harder it is to stop that train or go in reverse. Each small decision or commitment makes each subsequent decision easier and also creates more pressure to keep moving forward. That's called consistency. Psychologists have known for a long time that the more difficult or the more trouble people have to go through to get something they want, the more they seem to value it, whether it be an Ivy League college admissions, a long sought after promotion, admission into a fraternity, a sports team, a country club. The what doesn't matter, only that the process for attaining it is exclusive, limited, and often has multiple steps. Each step that a person completes for admission is a commitment and a building block towards something bigger, which is either admission or acceptance into the group. This is one of the reasons why people identify with a political party. They tend to share common beliefs and values and commitments to a certain worldview. These commitments reinforce and strengthen each person's belief in the correctness of their party's approach. That's consistency. And it's very hard to change your views or opinions, even when confronted with irrefutable facts that your views are incorrect or out of step with the rest of society. Let me share an example with you. I did an experiment on commitment and consistency one day at Logan Airport in Boston. My friend and I would set down a laptop on a seat near somebody and then walk away to see how long it took someone to come by and try to take it. And on average, it took about 15 minutes. We retrieved the laptop each time, and the thief usually claimed that they were bringing it to Lost and Found. No big deal. Then we made one slight change to the experiment. I would put the laptop down in a seat and then ask the person sitting next to me if they would commit to watching the laptop while I made a quick visit to one of the stores in the terminal. They almost always agreed, and I would walk away, and a few minutes later, one of my friends would go by and try to steal the laptop. He would use all sorts of excuses like, my friend asked me to pick the laptop up, and Scott asked me to charge his laptop for him. But in 95% of the cases, the person who had committed to watching the laptop refused to relinquish the computer no matter what. They had promised or committed to protect it, and they wanted to remain consistent with their earlier promise. And that's all it took. That's the power of commitment and consistency between complete strangers. Now, why are these concepts so powerful? Well, consistency can impact many areas of your life, from your money and finances to your relationships to your job and even your career, for example. Once somebody commits to something, no matter how small the commitment is, they've taken a stand and they've started to build a psychological foundation on that particular topic. That's why salespeople push so hard for a signature and a commitment after a sales presentation. If they can get a commitment in terms of a deposit or even a signature, it becomes much more difficult to change your mind later on. The train is now moving down the track. Commitment and consistency are also good for both the buyer and the seller in the sales process. The seller gets to make a decision that can take advantage of a product or service that they need or want, and the seller gets to make a sale and start a relationship. Consistency and commitment can help people focus and cut through the mental clutter in their minds. I'll give you another example. My younger son loves multiplayer computer games, and I gave in one year and agreed to buy him two expensive multiplayer games for the holidays. Then, as his birthday approached months later, he asked for another two games. That's consistency. Now, I was getting expensive, but what could I say? I almost had to buy it for him. Then in the next year, he wanted a few new games for the holidays. Now, could I really say no when he bought a few games before? No chance. I was ensnared by the power of commitment and consistency. And in that scenario, my son basically owned me. Because of my past behavior, I wanted to remain consistent with what I had done previously. And unless I really couldn't afford it, I pretty much had to buy him the games. You know, there's a great book that I read that studied how the Chinese and the North Koreans during the Korean War utilized brainwashing on prisoners in POW camps. While the guards in the camps used to use beating and torture to try to get what they wanted, they soon discovered that beatings and torture just caused resentment and hatred on the part of the oppressed prisoners, which is understandable. They then discovered a far better, more powerful way was to get the prisoners to make a series of small commitments and agreements over time that led to much bigger changes. For example, the prisoners would be asked to write a simple letter in their handwriting about the good qualities of America, and then they were asked to name just one social area that America was behind on or lagging in, like civil rights or free speech, something like that. So the prisoner would write a letter with a tiny criticism of America and then receive a nice meal as a reward for the letter. Then later, they'd be asked to write another letter about other areas where the United States could improve or do better. The prisoner would often comply because they'd already identified and taken a stand on one area where the U.S. needed to improve. So what's the big deal? There's no harm in listing a few additional areas. Every country needs to make improvements. Then after the prisoner wrote those letters critical of various U.S. policies, the guards broadcast the letters on the camp's audio system for the other prisoners to hear. Now, the other prisoners knew that this person wasn't beaten or tortured into writing these statements. So they started to think of that writer as a collaborator, and they isolated him from the group. And the prison staff continued to reward the prisoner for taking a stand. Before long, the prisoner had changed his identity from being a supporter of the U.S. in the war to an active critic of U.S. policies. Getting people to make small commitments over time, then building on each one, gradually engages both the tools of commitment and consistency to bring about enormous psychological pressure. So how and where can you apply this concept of commitment and consistency in your sales and marketing? Well, if you're selling a product or service, it helps if you can get a customer or prospect to make a commitment to buy in the first meeting. You can get them to recap or tell you about all of the important and valuable attributes of your particular product or service. You can get them to commit to receiving additional information or literature. Any small commitment will do. This is sometimes called the foot in the door technique, where you get a prospect to agree to a seemingly simple and harmless request and use that agreement to ask for a bigger and more substantial decision and commitment later in the discussion. You can also show how this new purchase is consistent with other items they may have purchased in the past. If you're in real estate, you can let buyers know how the property that you're showing them is similar to a past property that they owned and like. That's consistency. If you're in the insurance business, you can let the client know that you can accept a $100 check to bind the policy until the policy is issued and enforced. That's commitment. If you're selling cars, you can offer a car at a very low, below market price and get the client to agree to buy from you. And then you might want to add on some small extras to build the price back up so you can make a profit. I know I've fallen for rust prevention, undercoating, warranty costs, and all sorts of stuff myself in the past. If you can get a client or prospect to take a stand and go on record with you that they will buy from you within a certain time frame, and if you can get a written commitment from them, that's the best, but a verbal one is also powerful. If there's also other witnesses who hear the verbal commitment, that'll also put pressure on the person to live up to their commitment. If you can show how buying a competitor's product or service is not consistent with the client's past purchasing behavior, this can tip the client in terms of the buy or don't buy scale firmly in your direction and against your competitor. If you can get the customer engaged in the sales process by getting them to answer a quick survey, fill out a questionnaire, or fill out a form at the beginning of the meeting, this will start to engage the power of commitment and consistency and help the customer get into the buying mode or getting them part of the sales process. which makes it easier to actually write up an order at the end of the meeting. Now, one last example. I remember when I pledged a fraternity way back in college. These guys were masters of influence. As part of the pledging process, which was several weeks long, a pledge had to participate in all sorts of tedious and mundane activities to prove their loyalty to the fraternity. It might be cleaning up the fraternity house after a party, which was a lot of cleaning, cleaning the bathrooms, making and serving food to the fraternity brothers. Each one of these small actions bound the pledge further to the group because we all knew that we could be thrown out or gotten rid of at any time during the pledging process. We had to memorize and recite long passages of the history of the fraternity and the founders. We had to perform all sorts of menial tasks for the fraternity brothers day and night. And I remember one time they drove us out into the middle of the woods in our underwear and had us figure out our way home. So it was really a challenging process. But the interesting thing was we couldn't quit because we realized that if we quit, then all the work, all the meaningless suffering, all the stuff that we went through would be worth nothing. So all of these small actions and commitments over time created tremendous psychological pressure to stay the course and remain consistent with our past behavior and committed to achieving our goals of admission into the fraternity. And it sounds crazy, but that process works. In fact, the Navy SEALs have a similar initiation process during BUDS training, basic underwater demolition training. It's much more professional than a fraternity, but like all good training courses, it seeks to weed out people who don't have the motivation to persevere. It relies heavily on the tools of commitment and consistency to build up an individual's mental toughness to overcome adversity and the ability to work as a cohesive team towards a common goal. These tools of influence are very, very powerful, and you should use them ethically and with care. Don't try to manipulate someone just to buy something that they don't need or want. You're supposed to use these tools to make any decision that they might make quicker, easier, and less stressful overall for them as clients and for you as the salesperson. Now, think about how using this simple tool of consistent and can make an immediate impact for you on your family, with your spouse, your significant other, maybe with your children, with your work colleagues or your boss, with your existing customers, and with prospects that you want to bring on as clients. Think about the huge payback that using this simple tool of consistency and commitment could have if you use it consistently in your life. Don't you owe it to yourself and your family to use it, maybe even right now? Now, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you're interested, please feel free to share it with friends, family members, or work colleagues. We have a comprehensive in-person training course on these concepts that you can get a steep discount on since you watched this video. And we also have a series of video-based training programs on these concepts that can be made available to you or a team or group from your company. And you'll also get a steep discount for a limited period of time. Thank you so much for attending this and watching this short video, and I hope to speak with you soon. Bye.